For us is a simple matter of accountability and equal justice. We all witnessed the violence and chaos and mayhem in our nation's capital on January 6th. The violence of the Capitol attack is self-evident. We saw it, we heard it, we experienced it in real time. Our response to this unprecedented and coordinated attack on our government and our elections process will define the concept of American justice to our nation and to the world. While the impact of the attack is devastating, including the death and injury of Capitol police officers, an even larger threat is the relative silence or the outright approval from elected officials who ignore or excuse this violent criminal behavior driven by lies and hate. Their actions fuel a cycle of violence, undermines our democratic process, and represents an imminent threat to our national security. A nonpartisan investigation of any Florida link to the insurrection is critical. The rise of hate groups and the increase in hate crimes in the United States is an epidemic, as the rabbi said. It's a cancer. And our community right here in St. Pete is not exempt from that cancer. In my final year as a county commissioner last year, I witnessed the escalation of rhetoric and threats as the commission tried to handle the COVID-19 pandemic. And right here in St. Petersburg, a few blocks away at Straw Park, as my family and I marched in a rally against hate, we were confronted by angry protesters, some from out of town, from these same groups bent on disruption and confrontation. It's time to bring this chaos to an end. It's time for accountability and the equal application of justice. The future of our democracy depends on it. Thank you.
Thanks. Good morning. I'm State Representative Ben Diamond, privileged to represent this district in Tallahassee in the Florida House of Representatives, and I want to thank Congressman Christ for inviting me to be here today, and I want to thank all of you for joining us. January 6th was one of the darkest days in our nation's history, and I think for many of us it will feel like a day that we will always remember where we were and what was happening. That unprecedented attack on our nation's capital, as so many of the previous speakers have mentioned, was an attack on our very democracy, on our values, on our Constitution, and our fundamental rights as Americans. The Attorney General of the United States has recognized that these hate groups and these violent extremists are one of the greatest threats to our continued rights and freedoms as Americans. And sadly, we've recently learned that there were many Floridians that were involved in the insurrection that are now facing criminal charges. And that is stunning. And for the safety of all Floridians, we need to understand why. As you all know, many of these groups espouse very dangerous white supremacist and anti-Semitic ideologies. And just a few weeks ago, we were all standing here together in front of this museum. The diversity of this city was in full effect as we came together to rally against anti-Semitism, against bigotry, against hate, after our museum was unfortunately scarred with anti-Semitic graffiti. Florida is much better than this, and our leaders must take action to show that we're better than this. This past legislative session in Tallahassee, I had a front row seat to the politics of fear and division, and I'm just sick of it. And I'd like to see some different leadership in terms of how we approach these problems. So I appreciate very much the call today by Congressman Christ and all of us, for Governor DeSantis to convene this nonpartisan commission to investigate Florida's role in this horrific attack. Thank you all for being here. And now I'd like to introduce my friend, our Hillsborough County State Attorney, Andrew Warren.
Good morning, everyone. First, let me thank the Congressman for starting this important conversation about the Florida connections to the January 6th riot. I'm concerned about this issue as an American, as a father, as a husband, but also as a public safety leader. In the criminal justice and law enforcement community, we need answers. Was the attack on our Capitol random and spontaneous, or was it coordinated and organized? Did the people just hear about some rally on Facebook and buy a ticket to DC? Or are they part of larger organizations connected with hate groups, racist, xenophobic, treasonous, that may be plotting sinister plans for the future? This is not a political question. This is a public safety priority. We need to make sure to protect our neighbors, our law enforcement officers, and our democracy, that we investigate organizations in Florida that are focused on violence and insurrection and see if they have any connections to the types of hate groups that we all agree cannot be allowed to lurk in the darkness in the Sunshine State. A thorough investigation into January 6th and its connections to Florida will help identify these hateful movements and bring the criminal justice system to bear on them. This is about more than what happened on January 6th. This is about what could happen tomorrow. Nobody, Republican, Democrat, wants hate groups organizing, arming themselves, and instigating violence in our state. Nobody. Investigating why so many Floridians breached the Capitol and committed crimes against our nation is critical to keeping hate out of our state and keeping our communities safe. Thank you.
I want to thank all the speakers this morning. I appreciate your presence and being here. Mayor, it's an honor to have you with us. Thank you so much. The governor needs to take executive action today, but he also needs to make clear where he stands on critical issues surrounding the gravest threat to our democracy since the Civil War. To eliminate confusion that was deliberately sown, which led to the January 6th insurrection, the governor needs to answer the following questions. Do you acknowledge that Joe Biden is our duly elected president? Do you agree that violent assault on our nation's capital was the very definition of an insurrection itself? And finally, Governor, do you support an independent, nonpartisan commission to investigate that insurrection? We need answers from our state's chief executive on these questions. We need Governor DeSantis to sign this executive order today to create an independent state commission to investigate hate groups that plague our state. Governor DeSantis, we need you to do the right thing for all Floridians and for our very democracy. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, we'll do our best, Evan.
Well, one of my questions is for the people, the Floridians that were there January 6th, what would you say directly to them?
Shame on them. It's terrible what they did. To participate in an insurrection against the very cathedral of freedom, our nation's capital, is unconscionable.
Can you respond to the governor sidestepping the question about the election being rigged? He said something about some shady things happening. I'm looking to get your reaction on that.
Can you say it again? I'm sorry.
Yeah, the governor made some comments about the election. He kind of sidestepped the question about the election being rigged. He said some shady things were happening. What's your response to that?
Well, I think he ought to answer questions. Why would you sidestep a question like that? He either feels one way or the other.
Let me ask more directly. Yesterday, the governor was asked, is the 2020 election rigged? He refused to answer. Is he fomenting this type of insurrection and violence by not answering that question?
His silence is hurting everything. You know, he ran to be governor. He needs to understand that's a leadership position in this state. Pretty big one, as a matter of fact. And if you can't answer questions like that, why are you trying to lead? He's not leading. He's leading a void, leaving a void for the state of Florida.
Congressman, the FBI is looking into this. They seem to be doing a pretty thorough job investigating. They've got almost 500 arrests now. The Congress is also, going to look into this, and the committees. Why a separate state investigation? What will that do?
Because sadly, Florida leads the nation in the number of arrests that led to this insurrection itself. As I said earlier, reported by the Sarasota Herald Tribune and USA Today, we're #1 in America in participating in this insurrection. That is shameful. It needs to be investigated. We need to find out why that could even be possible in a place like Florida. It shouldn't be. And the governor needs to take leadership and sign this executive order today.
You were governor. Do you have any idea how you think a commission like this would be set up? Has this been done in the state before?
A commission like this can be set up in a nonpartisan fashion. You can have Republicans, Democrats, and independents as members of this commission to look into why this happened, how this happened, and make sure it never happens again.
One thing I'm hearing from conservatives after publishing this article, and you hear it from some conservatives in Congress as well, what about left-wing extremism? They point to Antifa and some of the protesters that were involved in the Black Lives Matter movement who got violent. Do you think that left-wing extremism is a problem as well that should be investigated?
Extremism of any kind should not be tolerated. That's obvious. But what we need to do is to look into the most extremist attack against our country at the nation's capital this past January the 6th. And I think the governor can lead on doing that if he has the leadership ability to do it. Thank you very much.
I have a question for Andrew. Is there anything that you can do on the local level to be harder on people who get involved in extremism like this?
Yeah, I mean, this is the significance of the commission that the congressman is calling for. Because whereas the FBI and the federal investigation are focused on the crimes that occurred in January, we should be focused on the potential for future crimes happening in Florida. Given the number of people who are attacking the Capitol, who have connections to Florida, the rise in hate crimes in our state, and the potential for violence down the road, that's where our focus needs to be. Again, this is not political. This is about public safety. And to the question that was asked before, what would you say to the people who showed up and participated in that attack? I would tell them that they have the right to remain silent and they have the right to have an attorney appointed for them.
Thank you very much. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Congressman.
Good job.
Great to ask you.
Yeah, good to see you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Nice words.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.